My name's Helen Shiers, and I'm a co-founder of a charity called Psds, which stands for Providing Support for Children with Down Syndrome and Their Families.
How did this charity come about?
The charity grew from three mums, myself included, meeting up shortly after our babies were born and diagnosed with Down syndrome. So my youngest daughter, Thea, who's now 14, was diagnosed with Down syndrome the day after she was born, back in 2005.
When your daughter was born and you had the diagnosis that early on, was it a surprise? Was it a shock? What was your reaction?
Well, it was a surprise, definitely. We had no idea that Thea would have Down syndrome. Nothing had been detected in the standard screening that we'd had. We had a daughter, Rowan, who was 2 years older than Thea. We'd had a very similar pregnancy the second time round. We were very excited to be completing our family. And the day after Thea was born, suspicions were raised on a ward check that she may have some signs of having Down syndrome. That was later confirmed by another doctor and a subsequent blood test, but it was a great shock to us all. We hadn't been expecting that news at all.
And how did you adjust your life to cater for that?
Well, we had some great advice in hospital from one of the doctors. A lot of information you can be given after a diagnosis like ours sort of focuses on what all the problems that may occur for a young person who has Down syndrome. And, we were given some of that information, but also the doctor was very encouraging about the fact that society has become more inclusive and many people with Down syndrome can lead very fulfilling lives. So we felt, although we felt very shocked and worried, we also felt that we needed to turn this news on its head, really, and focus on all the things that we were hopeful that Thea would be able to do. Just take her home, first of all, and love her as a little baby, shower her with love and do everything we can to help her to achieve her potential. So we did reach out after we had Thea to other families, and we got some very sort of supportive, a network of people that helped us greatly in the early days.
Were you aware that there were organisations who could help you, or were you very much left after you went home with her to cope for it on your own, to try to work it out yourself?
Well, we contacted the Down Syndrome Association. There's a national charity called the Down Syndrome Association based in Teddington. We did get in contact with them sort of in the first few days of coming home with Thea. And I spoke to a guy on their helpline who was brilliant. And he actually said, look, I'll send you some information, but first of all, don't read it. Just get to know your baby. And, you don't need to become an expert in Down syndrome immediately. So don't worry, just get to know Thea. And there's some information to help you if you need it. And that was very useful information and a great advice, because I think my immediate concern after Thea's diagnosis was that this diagnosis would change Thea's life and it would change all of our lives, and we'd have to learn to be different parents to the ones that we'd been with our eldest daughter, Rowan. And actually what this guy was saying was that isn't really that necessary. Just get to know Thea.
And of course, taking her home and that advice you got about just getting to know her, at the end of the day, she's still a human being, still a person in her own right.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that can happen often, that your child is given a label and they lose their identity for a while. And, we need to be thinking of people first and thinking of our children who have Down syndrome as just like any other child, really. And bear in mind, too, that having a diagnosis of Down syndrome doesn't define who your child is and what they will achieve. It's just part of who your child is. Thea has an extra 21st chromosome. That's the most typical form of Down syndrome. It does create for her some challenges to overcome, but it doesn't define who she is. It's just part of who she is, not what she is.
You set up the charity in 2006. What's that, 13 years ago?
Yes.
And how has it grown in that time?
Well, the charity started, as I said, I mentioned, three mums sort of met, myself, Sarah and Vicky. We all had babies born with Down syndrome within a few months of each other. Our babies were all born at the same hospital, East Surrey Hospital, but we all lived in different towns. So we wouldn't have met had it not been for our babies having their extra chromosomes. So we're incredibly grateful for that. And we started off I don't think the intention was to set up a charity. It was very much just to provide a support group for families. So we'd all met one or two other families in our first sort of few months of having our children, and decided that maybe we should do a coffee morning, and if the families and parents with their children wanted to get together and just share advice and just kind of, share information, really. So we did our first coffee morning and we had 7 families who attended. And now we have worked with over 100 families in our local area since the charity first, it sort of grew out of that first coffee morning, really, and evolved quite naturally around our children's development evolving. So it was never an intention, I don't think, for us to set up a charity, but it's been an amazing experience, and we've loved every minute of it.
And with the charity, what do you aim to achieve, to offer people?
So our key aims really are to offer, particularly in the early stages of somebody's journey, that sort of reassurance that Down syndrome is just part of who your child is. It's not what they are or who they are. So, get to know your child first, really reiterating the advice we were given. We provide support for families at whatever stage of their journey they want to get in touch with us. So for some families, that's very soon after their baby's been born, if they've received that diagnosis. We've had families contact us in pregnancy, where they've had a diagnosis during their pregnancy. And we've had families get in touch, when their children are a few years old, that have either moved to the area or have just decided now's the time that they'd like to sort of reach out to other families. So it's a very personal journey for people. But we provide support for the whole family through our sort of family get-togethers, coffee mornings, the information and advice we can give out. And we also provide services for our young children to access. So we set up a preschool group which runs 3 days a week on a Monday, Thursday and Friday in Outwood near Red Hill. And that's to help our young children get ready for starting school, and also to help parents and give advice around activities you can work on with your children at home just to help their development. We also run a school support service, so providing training for teachers and teaching staff when our children are in school. And we recently, last year, launched new activities for teenagers around sort of a social activity program, sort of getting out and doing things with your friends who have Down syndrome, and also working on a youth communication group, which it tackles things like friendships, negotiation skills, sort of, self-awareness, those sorts of important skills that we all need to learn.
This coming Monday, the 28th of October, you're showing a film at Leatherhead Theatre. The film is called The Peanut Butter Falcon. Could you tell me a little bit about the film? What is special about this film?
Well, this film is special for a number of reasons, but predominantly because it has a lead actor who has Down syndrome in one of the key roles within this film. And I think that's a very important thing for our young people to see role models. The actor's called Zack Gotts-agen, and he plays a character also called Zack in the film. The film actually was written for him by two guys, Mike and Tyler, who met Zack at a sort of an acting workshop, and were really impressed with his skills and wanted to write a film that would star a young man who has Down syndrome. So they wrote the film, The Peanut Butter Falcon. It's not based on Zack's life, but it's based on the journey that his character goes on to basically fulfill his dream. It's been receiving great reviews, and we just wanted to make sure that our young people and families and friends of our charity and people in our community generally would get a chance to see it, because not every cinema will pick it up as it's an independent film. And we just wanted to have the opportunity to celebrate the film and celebrate the work of Zack in the film. So it's really for us about visibility and celebrating someone's success, showcasing their talent, which is really inspirational.
Are you treating the showing of this film as a fundraiser for your charity, or are you looking more to show the film just to raise awareness of the whole issue about Down syndrome?
It's a bit of both, really. I think primarily it's awareness raising. I think, as I mentioned, it's great for our young people who have Down syndrome to see role models like Zack. There are other role models out there who are doing a brilliant job in raising awareness and raising profile of, showcasing the abilities of young people who have Down syndrome. So it's great to have that opportunity. So very much it was about raising awareness and giving this film a platform and the audience that we think it deserves. But also it is an opportunity to raise awareness about our charity Psds within our local community. So any opportunity to do that is obviously gratefully received by us all.
And back to your daughter Thea, how is she doing?
She's doing great. She's a very typical teenager, so life is interesting in our house. She's mad on music and dancing. That's her passion, and She does dance twice a week. Actually, she danced in a showcase at Leatherhead Theatre last year with her dance group, Desire to Dance. So she's very much a performer herself. She loves dancing and drama. She's really into music. She has an older sister, Rowan, who I mentioned, who's 16, who loves sports. So they have different interests, but they're just like typical teenage siblings, love each other one minute and arguing the next. But, you know, life is never boring in our house, and it's certainly exciting and fulfilling. And, you know, we're just grateful to have two fabulous daughters in our lives.
Well, Helen, thank you very much for speaking to us on Surrey Sound.